Nothing like specifics.
Welcome back, listeners, or if you are new, welcome to Digital Divide Podcast. I am Justin Fry.
And I'm Josh Charletto.
This is episode 15, so let's cut to the chase. I like the little fluctuation there.
Oh, got to get it in there.
Alrighty, so thanks for everybody listening to the last episode. This episode's going to be, I guess, a little nerdy one again.
If we never do that. That's never happened.
No.
Not on this show.
Okay, I think you're overdoing it.
Never.
Yeah, so last episode was pretty nerdy. In this episode, we'll get to it later, but we're going to be talking about within the same realm of the nerd universe, which is totally okay, because that's who we are, and I'm okay with that.
Hopefully the subject, while nerdy, will be interesting because of the way that we ask the questions.
Exactly.
So I'm hoping it won't be too D&D level nerdy.
God, no. No, I definitely think it'll be a little less than that. And just specifically, too, because you and I have different opinions about the specific topic, but also my experiences with this said object is much different than yours. I think due to generational differences, but mainly just your upbringing into that universe. So let's actually go right to our news articles this week. Josh, why don't you start us off?
Sure. I'm not going to take up too much time with this, but there is a law in Australia that is on the docket, and I don't know how serious it is or how far they've gone with it, but it's definitely not passed yet. However, the law is to basically build in a back door to every system so that the government has access through encryption if they need to get through it for law enforcement. So that begs a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's a little concerning.
I agree.
I mean, not to disclose any information, but we have counterparts in Australia.
Yes, we do in our own company. Many people do.
Yes.
So it's an interesting thing to think about that the government would not only just be considering it, but have a law potentially passed where they could get into any system. Now, I know personally that I feel like here in the US, this would be struck down in a heartbeat. I feel like there's too many people who feel as though the government's too big as it is, and they don't need to have that kind of access. However, it's interesting to think about other cultures and other places where maybe they don't feel that way, and they feel maybe safer having the government have access through encryption. So I personally am a strong believer in encryption being very adding to the safety of the people who are using these devices. So I don't think this is a good idea, but it'll be interesting to see how it progresses. So I put the article in show notes. It's pretty interesting. You can do a search and just pull up several articles covering this phenomenon, if you will, and read through it. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely different from our perspective, from our country, from just the way we approach our country approaches topics like this. So yeah, it's different, and I'm sure in every country, specifically I know in Austria, they have, and same with other countries like Italy as well. There's this thing called fiscalization that occurs. And you can Google that if you want. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but it's really surprising how much the government wants to start. Wow, I'm starting to feel like I'm ranting about government. Long story short, the government having more of an involvement in businesses and the sales at a business taking place, but also the applications that a business owns or creates, in this particular case in Australia, having a back door just in case. It's a little weird, but hey, to each their own, I guess.
Yeah, and you can see it in the EU already and several other countries out there that the government is taking a more active role in digital property and what it means to own data and all those kinds of things. So I guess this is a natural progression in many ways. So definitely other places think about it differently.
Let's not get into a really deep hole there because we are trying to get listeners, not scare people away.
And rant. Wait,
And
wrong section.
wrong section. Oh, you're jumping ahead. It's not time to close yet, Josh. We
All
just
right.
started. So my topic I have today is actually not Apple related, which I know some people might be surprised, but some of us have at one point tried Android phones or used things other than Apple products. Surprise, surprise. But recently, as of this article was posted on the 6th, but Android Pie, or Google's Android P is what it used to stand for, or it was the code name first, and then now they have given it the oh so tasty name Pie. And if you're not an Android user, all the application or all their OSs are based off of candy, essentially. Sort of how Apple takes trends, where it's a bunch of hipsters. Oh, sorry, whoops. It's a bunch of interestingly named places, mountain, nature places in California. But for Android,
Well,
just,
hey, wait a minute.
what?
Don't forget it used to be Big Cats.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
my
yeah.
favorite.
I was trying to avoid that because no one wants to
No,
buy
Big
Snowball.
Cats. They were
Yeah.
the best.
Anyways, obviously someone's still stuck in their time. Android Pie brings new features which might seem similar or are similar to what Apple has announced that will be coming with iOS 12. They kind of go hand in hand. I think it's really the shift in how a lot of the companies, specifically Apple and now Google, are trying to move people away from their phones. So some of the features, and I'm not going to read off the list, but some of the new features that come with this, one of them being a very similar curbing phone use application that will monitor your time, limit your time, set up like reminders saying, hey, you're using 25 minutes of your Facebook, get off because Facebook is not that interesting. You have work to do. So it's cool to see new OSs. And basically, so let me retract that or step back. I'm really starting off strong today.
You and me both.
It's nice to see some interesting features or other features being taken on not just by one conglomerate, but all the conglomerates are kind of sticking together and implementing what I'd like to say are truly beneficial features in technology or in their technology to help us get away from technology. So that's really nice. There's a bunch of new features like new gestures that are supposed to remove the home button. So very similar to how we lost our home button with the iPhone 10, and that is the correct way of pronouncing the iPhone 10, not X.
Oh, Lord.
It's basically giving gestures that will remove that take or replace the back button, the home button itself, and I think it was the multitask button. So now it's just like a little pill that you hold down or press the icon and it brings up Google Assistant. So pretty cool stuff. I'm sure there's performance peaks or improvements in there, battery life. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of things, but take a look at that article. I'm done talking about Android.
Just glancing through it, since I'd never actually prepared, it seems like a pretty standard release, like
Yeah.
nothing too crazy, and almost like they're trying to get a lot more performance, if you will, and battery life out of their stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how it affects it.
I totally forgot. There's one that stood out to me. I'm a silly goose. Yes, I just said silly goose. One of the features in this is that if your application is in background status, it actually will turn off things like your mic or restrict access to mic or camera or any other of like the sensory pieces of your phone, which I think is fantastic because that Google is basically trying to, whether it's intentional or not, create this image of your phone's not constantly recording everything you're doing, or the government could be listening into you, blah, blah, blah. It's like curbing, to me, that's curbing some of that paranoia. But cool feature. I enjoy that.
iPhone already does that, just not automatic.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, this is Android, and Yeah, someone's got to do it.
But it already was done.
Well,
Okay, so moving on.
All right, moving on. Moving on to follow up, part 2 of this show. I would like to follow up on something that Josh is probably really happy about. We've already talked about this, but God, guess what, Josh?
What's that, Justin?
I've been playing Breath of the Wild again.
Can you tell everybody what Breath of the Wild is?
That is a Zelda game that is currently available on Nintendo Switch and Wii, and I think that's it. Yeah, Wii and Switch.
Not we.
You.
Come on, man.
Sorry. I don't know. I don't know what you kids play these days.
Oh, goodness.
But
great. Well, that's fun. Do you like it again, or I can't keep track of what you're doing with video games anymore.
Wow. What is that supposed to mean? Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think what my problem is that I don't want to put the commitment in to play it, or I'm just being lazy and I like to read more. But I picked it up last night. I've been like playing with the idea of playing, and I was like, I'm gonna try and get to one of these bosses. I'm just gonna make it super plain and boring, but I want to get these main bosses, and I wanted to beat it. And 3.5 hours later, at 11 o'clock at night, I'm like, okay, I need to go to sleep.
That is the danger of that game for sure. It is so good.
Yeah, I was really
you just
surprised.
Get kind of sucked in, and then that's the end.
Yeah, it was definitely something I wasn't anticipating would happen. But I enjoyed it, and I actually was playing before we had this we started recording today. So when I get off, I'll probably end up playing a little bit more.
Yeah, there's no wrong way to play that game, really, and the beauty of it is that really it's just a relaxing, explore, have fun, do whatever you want, do whatever you see in front of you type of game.
Yeah,
that's the fun of it. If you stress about what you need to do and how much there is to do and looking around, then it's not as much fun, I would say. But just explore and be interested in the things around you and be like, wow, that's a cool mountain, I'm going to climb it, or neat, that's tree, it looks interesting, and all that kind of stuff. So
I like picked up a box and like dropped it, and it what are those dudes with a leaf above their heads? They give you the seeds.
Oh, the Koroks, yes.
Yeah, I just dropped it, and oh hey, I got a seed, and now I can go trade those in, or exchange those, which I have a whole bunch, and I have to go find that guy.
The fun in that game is discovery, like just wandering around, discovering things. You really could honestly listen to podcasts while playing that game.
Yeah, I'm thinking about probably doing that, just like I said tonight, but we'll see. But that was cool. I'm really excited to keep playing, and maybe I'll have some more follow-up next week on where I'm at. Maybe that's what I should do for follow-up, and like the quest of Justin completing, or at least what Justin did this weekend, Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, the beauty of that game is how accessible everything is. There's no mechanics. Everything you are going to get mechanics-wise in the game is right at the beginning. So there's no change. You play the game, you're there. So it's great.
Exactly. Okay, Josh, what follow-up do you have?
So I wanted to follow up on that rant you did on the last episode about free-range parenting.
Yeah, by the way, our last episode had the most listens, I guess, or most popularity according to iTunes. So,
really?
Yeah, so maybe that rant was the reason why.
No, I don't. I mean, sure it is. So when you brought it up and put it in the show notes, I knew nothing about it. And after the podcast, I Googled it, like the smart person I am. And I feel like we mischaracterized it. It's the way that we talked about it and you were talking about it, it sounded very extreme. Like the parents who are involved in that movement, which isn't really even a movement. It's just kind of like a newer, I don't know, more modern style of parenting.
Well, it like was modern being it started in the 60s. Like they have people who were proponents or were speaking out, preaching this, like I think early 60s, 70s, but I think it kind of like waned and then just recently gained popularity. But please do go on.
Sure, like the 90s, we saw the rise of whatever you mentioned last time as well, with the helicopter parents and that being the new thing and blah, blah, blah. And this was kind of the the counter to that, if you will. But the real problem comes in where I started finding all these links to a whole bunch of court cases and interesting articles where parents were going to jail for letting their kids do age appropriate free range things with their own responsibility.
Yeah.
So there's some states that have laws against kids walking home from school, some states with laws against kids being left at home, which again, the part that needs to be stressed about free range parenting is the idea that it's supposed to be age appropriate and it's supposed to be with the right kind of supervision or the right amount of time. So, I mean, who's to say what that really is? But with that in mind, it's not an extremist thing. It's like, I don't know, it just made it sound like we were saying that these crazy parents are letting their kids go out at night at 11 at night and walking around the streets. So, I just wanted to follow up and say that's not what it is. It's about letting your kids have their own kind of autonomous or independence, if you will, and doing things that are age appropriate without supervision that is overbearing.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was mischaracterizing, but that was my impression.
I don't
So,
think that you were trying to. I just want to make sure that it was put out there so that
yeah.
we aren't.
We're not professionals on parenting. I don't think anybody is. So,
Really, we're not professionals on almost everything, so,
yeah, we just get paid to do things.
I wish we did. Anyway, moving on.
Right. So, this topic we're talking about, we're going to be really focusing on the Marvel Universe movies versus the comic books, but mainly just, I guess, the Marvel Universe itself. I know, Josh, you're a big proponent for the Marvel Universe in itself because I think you have more of your favorite, we'll call them favorite characters, favorite heroes in this universe. Is that correct?
It is and it isn't.
Oh,
And that's kind of what I want to talk about. And I think that something else that I was thinking as I was considering this topic, maybe we should, as we have discussed before, actually talk about the movies one by one at some point. Like actually go through each movie or some of our favorite movies or break them down. I think that would be fun.
that would
But this
be
is
a
more,
lot.
yeah, I think that would be a lot, but also fun. But this is more a very general look at where this has gone with these characters and Marvel as a company and how it started and our opinions of those things. I think that would be interesting to talk about.
I don't know much history on the Marvel Universe, to be quite honest with you.
Sure.
I grew up not reading comics. I just watched, I think, really, I just watched I think it was the Ultimate Spider-Man, or, oh, shoot. I don't remember the
Please
name.
tell me that is not what you watched as your first Spider-Man comic or cartoon rather.
TV show. But I remember, I think it was, was it the Ultimate? No, the Amazing, no. Man, I gotta figure out. I'll find out and I'll let you know.
Because there was a show in the 90s, and I don't remember what that was called, and it was a cartoon. But then there was Ultimate Spider-Man, and that one's more recent, but that was like 2000s, I think, or
No,
something.
no. Then it would just be Spider-Man, I guess. The 1994 series. Yep, 94
Okay, yeah.
animated series. Spider-Man the animated series. That's what it was called.
That's the one that I watched as well, and that was a great cartoon.
So yeah, that was my intro into really Marvel in itself. So that was I mean, that's not that very long ago, and I really didn't look into it as a kid. I just liked Spider-Man. I still do. So,
So I think that's a great start. I read a good number of comics, and at the time of reading comics, I did not like the Marvel Universe almost at all. In fact, I actively could not stand Captain America. I read some X-Men comics. I enjoyed Wolverine specifically. I read a lot of Wolverine comics. I read a lot of Batman comics. Like DC is more my thing, especially in the comics. What else? I read some of the Punisher, not so much, but only a little bit. But most of the Marvel characters to me were uninteresting. The comics to me for Marvel Marvel always focused more on the characters themselves rather than the characters being superheroes. It
Yeah,
was more about the struggle of the people being superheroes rather than them actually doing cool things.
that's basically
And
what
as
X-Men is.
yeah, and as a kid, that was not as interesting to me. And I was very, very interested in the idea of Batman. I loved Batman. I couldn't stand Superman, which, only because of the movies do I like it. But,
Wait, hold on.
yep,
Movies.
the old movies, the
Okay,
first movies
just want to
with
clarify.
Christopher Reeve. Um, so I was more of a DC kid. Marvel to me was not as interesting. And so then we had this whole phenomenon where the Marvel Studios started making the MCU, the Marvel Comics universe, which I think it's the Marvel Comics universe, but the idea being that Marvel producing their own movies created this movie universe based on the comics with our favorite superheroes. And I put our favorite superheroes in quotes because, again, I wasn't as interested in them. Oh, I read some Spider-Man. I almost forgot about Spider-Man. Anyway, the movies have really popularized these characters and made them interesting, even for me. Like I love Captain America. I love Iron Man now, and it's interesting to talk about or think about where it came from. So you said you didn't read any comics, or you read only a few.
Yeah, I growing up, I don't think I can't recall. I think we may have like if we were in Toys R Us, rip. If we were in like Toys R Us or some other place, maybe Barnes and Noble. I'm not really entirely sure if I wanted to pick up a magazine or a comic book. I would like, pretty much just tell my parents, "Hey, can I buy this?" And we'd get it. And so I'd get like one-offs, and they were usually Batman.
It's
As
because
far as like
Batman's awesome.
yeah, it was, and they were dark Batman ones. I remember specifically the art in the comic was really really dark, and I kind of enjoyed that because it wasn't this cartoony. And it might have been at that time I was probably I don't know, middle school, and I thought, whoa, that would be silly to have cartoon looking Batman. I just want the cool Batman. So that's what I read every once in a while, but really I never read a series or read a specific superhero. So I really didn't even get into. I wouldn't even consider it into comics because I still don't.
Sure.
But just until the movies, really, and it was more anime for me that I got into
Oh
than
man, we could make that a whole different topic. We should
yeah,
jot that down.
yeah, anime.
So then okay, maybe we should define also that there's a difference between the Marvel Studios created Marvel movies. Wow, that was a mouthful.
Yeah,
And
that
then
was.
the Fox owned Marvel joint franchises. I don't know if that's even a thing. Did I make that up? I think I made that up.
No,
So,
I think you're right.
yeah, there was Spider-Man, who until recently was held very tightly by Fox. And then there is still the Fantastic Four within Fox's grip.
Absolutely terrible.
Yes, absolutely terrible. What else? They had the Hulk at one point,
The
I
first
believe.
one, and that
Yeah.
was the Incredible Hulk. No, that was just Hulk.
Yeah, and
And that
then the Incredible Hulk, right?
yeah, Hulk was with
I like that actor. I always forget his
Eric
name.
Bana.
Yes. And there was one other one. I mean, so basically what happened was Marvel didn't have the money to produce their own comic book character based movies. So they sold the rights to their characters to to Fox rather.
Right.
And that was to get started and build these movies with money they didn't have, which really the movies, especially the Marvel Studios movies, have really saved their butts. Nobody's reading comics anymore, really. Or at least I don't think anybody's reading comics anymore.
Yeah.
And so th- there's been a resurgence into their characters thanks to these awesome movies they've produced, but that was not the case, I would say, with the exception of maybe some of the Spider-Man movies with the Fox movies. What did you think of the Fox movies?
I don't. Fantastic, and that's Fantastic Four, right? Sorry to make.
Yeah, there was Fantastic Four, the Hulk,
Yeah. So
Spider-Man. There were three or four or six Spider-Mans, I think.
no, there was three.
There was the three and then the two after.
The two after, there's just Homecoming and that's it.
No,
What are
sir.
you talking about? Spider-Man movies. Regardless, I didn't like. I did. Are you talking about the Tobey Maguire ones?
Yes.
Okay, so Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2,
Yeah, so Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 3,
3.
those were all Tobey Maguire.
Yes.
And then,
There's the Amazing Spider-Man
right? And then The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
2.
And those were, I forgot his name.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God. I totally blocked that out.
Yeah.
Holy
I mean,
cow.
those were good.
Yeah, those were really good. What's his name? I'm looking at his picture right now and I can't think of his name.
Anyway, those were not Tobey Maguire, but also those were Fox films.
Oh my gosh, I can't
And that
believe
was
that.
before Spider-Man Homecoming. And the reason Spider-Man Homecoming was created and named the way it was because the rights came back to Marvel.
Yes.
Which is also interesting because Marvel made a pretty controversial move at the time and started tanking their Spider-Man comics. In other words, because they couldn't get the rights back, and they did this to Fantastic Four, from what I understand as well, they started making their comics actively garbage for those characters to kind of like tank the interest in the characters. So
Andrew
that,
Garfield.
yes, Andrew Garfield, so that Fox would eventually just sell back or hand back the rights to those characters.
Nice.
Eventually, they got to some kind of agreement, especially since now Disney is buying Fox,
Yeah, of
and
course.
Disney already owns Marvel, so it's not going to matter anyway.
But to answer your question, which you had initially asked, I didn't. I think the only Spider-Man movies that I liked were the ones with Andrew Garfield, and I actually was surprised to like them. I didn't like Toby Maguire. I not at all. And then, whoops. And for the Fantastic Four, same thing. They were pretty terrible. The Hulk, or just Hulk, was absolutely terrible. I remember watching that as a kid, like really, really young, and I just remember it being just not the Hulk I wanted it to be.
Justin, you're killing me.
What?
I still haven't seen the Hulk movies, the standalones, at
They're all
all.
bad. Like I don't like either of them.
I can't believe it's killing me that you saw that movie as a kid. That's killing me right now.
Yeah. Oh God, how old was I? So that's the one with Eric Bana. So that was probably 2000s, early 2000s, really early 2000s.
So I grew up with comics,
Mm-hmm.
and it was super nerdy to be into comics. By the way, it still is.
Oh yeah, to actually read and collect.
Correct.
Shout out to Stefan out there. He has a crazy collection, and it's totally okay to have that many. So
Those guys are my heroes. Good job.
exactly.
So, and I had a friend who had a X-Men #1 mint
Oh my.
condition on it was laminated, all the good stuff. Anyway, sorry.
You're fine.
So I grew up with comics, and I wasn't a huge comic nerd like you. I mean, I bought the ones I could when I could. It wasn't constant, and it was almost always Batman. But there was a stigma associated to comic book reading, and it was so huge when we got the comic book based Batman movie. And I know that Superman came before that, but for me, I was a little bit young and hadn't really I saw it, but I was a kid, so it wasn't as impactful as when Tim Burton's Batman came out,
Oh
and
yeah.
that movie like shaped my childhood. And it was so huge, and it was incredible that they would even consider ever bringing a comic book hero, especially as like dark, if you will, quotes, as Batman was, to the big screen seriously. And that's kind of like the crux of the issue is that Superman was great, but it also was kind of, well, I mean, it was serious, but I've never liked Superman except for those movies later. Batman was like a really serious movie with Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton. I mean, those were big name actors
Yeah.
at the time.
Those were good. That was. I think those were one of the first Batman movies I saw, like with the Penguin and whatnot. So
Well, that was the second one, but the first one was with the Joker
yes, Jack
and
Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, which is still an amazing performance.
He was awesome.
No Ledger, but still amazing.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, that was what made those movies so special, was
Yeah.
that it was had never really been done so seriously before and so dark, and it also took Batman in a very specific direction, and it was so out there and different, and it was not like the Marvel movies. We're getting one almost every year now, which is crazy.
Yes.
And I feel
Almost
like it's
twice two.
lost.
I'd say two, almost 2 or 3 a year
Yeah, sometimes.
minimum.
I feel like it's lost some of that specialness,
Yeah.
which, see also Star Wars. I'm concerned about this happening as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's lost some of that specialness, and it's also lost that tie to comics. I don't think that the people who go see the Marvel movies these days care a lick about the
Yeah.
comics. Um,
Well,
and
can I
I
can I
don't know.
defend them?
Well, please.
Because my problem with comics is that you go in, you see this movie, and maybe that sparks interest, and then you go to find what comic book to start, and I have no idea where to start. There's like 42 reboots of Batman, and heck if I know which one to start. And then there's like 3 different Supermans where one guy is the one Superman kills people, one doesn't. Like, I'm making this up, but like there's like the same thing with Marvel. There's all these reboots, and you could see how people get discouraged and just like, I'm going to see the movie because I can watch it. I could at least follow this one. I can't follow the 4 different versions of the Incredible Hulk.
Well, I'm going to start by agreeing with you, and then I'll disagree.
Okay.
So I'm going to agree with you in the fact that Marvel, especially, has taken a lot of pains and effort to tie so many of their stories together, and you have to see comic book X from 5 years ago in order to understand arc Y. It's ridiculous. But that's also a cop out, sir. I mean, for goodness sake, that's why we have Google. And there are some shining graphic novels that have been put together in
Okay.
each series where people will always recommend them, and you can go pick those up. Like, I can give you 3 of them right now from Batman that I could say, go buy this. It's self-contained. It's a great story. You'll love it.
Yeah.
And those have existed for some time. It's harder to do with Marvel, like I just said, but that's a cop out because you can Google search that. So come on, man, it's easy. You can do it.
Well, I guess we'll have to see.
So the point is, though, that like the comics and having a movie tied to the comics is what makes that stuff special. And now it's really just about making movies. And I think that the Marvel movies, on the whole, are amazing. They're really pushing the envelope and making these great movies with great CGI and great choreography, and they're amazing movies. But at the same time, I feel like we've lost some of that specialness of them. I don't know how to define it other than specialness, because they're tied to these stories that are hundreds of pages long and take into account lots of different characters and have these massive ramifications on their own worlds, and it's very different in the comics. And so I find it interesting that you grew up with some of the earlier Marvel comics as your childhood, and I didn't have that experience. I had comics to
Yeah.
stand up on, basically.
Well, yes, I think the movies were just made it easier for me, and that's why I enjoyed them as much. But I don't think I focused too much on Marvel side because I fell in love with all the DC movies that came out. So for
Like
example,
which ones?
yeah, perfect. For example, I enjoyed the Christopher Nolan Batmans.
Oh, those were amazing, of course.
To me, that was like the Batman that I envisioned. Again, this is depicting really weird. I'm like a dark that I like dark things, but I enjoyed it because it was more real. It showed like real meaning. Here's this guy whose life is whose life was turned upside down. He's like spiraling downwards. He's this rich man spiraling downwards. Blah blah blah. And it just had this dark tone to it, and him becoming more of a human, I guess, if you would like to say that, and just the whole struggles that he went through, and the art, the music, it just played a lot better. And I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but the Heath Ledger performance of Joker is by far the best movie, comic book movie, if you want to call them. Are we calling them comic book movies? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
sure. Why not?
That is the best movie I have ever seen. Just it
His
was
performance of Joker is
no one can.
incredible, and
Yeah.
can't imagine that anyone will ever do it as well. The only person I hold up as the Joker as close is Mark Hamill from the animated series.
Which I didn't even know was a thing.
Yep. Oh yeah. Good
but
times.
but yeah,
He's awesome.
I liked the Batman series, and I really think that was it. I didn't. I liked. I was a. When I watched the one with like Mr. Freeze with Arnold Schwarzenegger and
Oh God, don't talk about those
those
movies.
were all kind of sketchy, and
Oh God,
they were all fun and games,
so
and that's why I
bad.
didn't like them. But I enjoyed it because it was Batman and Robin, and I enjoyed the duo. And I really hope. I'm kind of disappointed that on the last Batman with Christopher Nolan that they left that cliffhanger, um, and played to they played a little bit to the comic book of the name of Robin's real name, or at least one of his names.
Yeah, no, that's not from the book at all.
Is
Like
it not?
that's no, they messed all that up, and I shouldn't say messed up. They went their own direction.
Okay. Well, they went their own direction, but I mean, not played homage to it, but they mentioned it. But
Played on the name, yeah.
yeah, but regardless,
You're
I
right.
was really hoping for that to continue, and that leads into like what DC movies are like now for me, which are really disappointing. I think the only one that I enjoy is the current was a Man of Steel, which was fantastic. And
Well, let's come back to that for a second because I want to mention something else,
what?
and this kind of highlights my point, which is that Batman becoming so dark was a direct response in the comic books to comic books. That sounds weird. But at the time, when Batman made that change to being like a super dark comic, at the time there was a comic called Spawn. Have you ever heard of Spawn?
Yeah, of course.
So, Spawn, for those that don't know, is a story about a guy who dies in combat and gives his soul away to the devil in order to come back and get vengeance on those who killed him.
Sounds like
Um,
Punisher, but
yeah, but like he's unkillable and he's a tortured soul and he's all zombified, like he can't go out in public because he's always going to be in his quote super suit,
yeah,
even though that's not what it is. It's like this dark energy that's he's always wearing. Anyways, the point was that it was super popular and it it flew off of shelves, and DC's response to that was to take Batman in that super dark direction, which I applaud because I love that side of Batman. That's my favorite Batman.
yeah, for sure.
But that was why, and I think that unless you read the comics, you don't know that. Now, to you, if you've watched the movies, that's
Yeah,
always been Batman. And yet, as even though I don't like the version of Batman where he's super campy and funny and
yeah.
hilariously running around on a Joker ship with a Joker bomb, like
Adam
trying to throw it in
West.
the water. Yeah, I don't like that style of Batman. I also respect it. That's where Batman came from.
Yeah,
So I have that respect for Batman and understanding its roots. And I
right.
don't think that the audiences who have just seen, especially like the Nolan movies,
Yeah,
get that. And the other thing about the Nolan movies, I really like them a lot. I mean, the second one, like you mentioned, The Dark Knight, is one of the greatest Batman movies, if not the greatest Batman movies ever.
yeah,
But I feel like they got tied too much to always having a real world reason for everything. And that
right.
eventually I feel like became a detriment to those movies. Where Marvel has always taken it and just said, no, this is the character. We're taking it for granted. Let's just have fun. And that's where those movies have taken off and just been so much fun to see these bigger than life personalities interact with each other. I
Yeah.
don't think DC is as good at that.
I haven't
The
even
exception,
seen the whatever. Oh my god, what's the Justice League. Jeez, I haven't even seen that yet. And
Yeah, I mean it was a solid CB movie.
okay, well, I still want to watch it because I'm a
It was
completionist.
okay. Yeah, I mean it was okay. Wonder Woman though, the movie was amazing. I love that
Mm,
movie. Love it.
I do not. I do not like that movie. I I can't get over, and this is gonna sound really really terrible because you have a similar opinion with my favorite movie, but that's in or one of my favorite movies, which is in the Marvel universe. But I don't like Wonder Woman.
As a character or just that
No,
movie?
that movie, just that movie.
Oh no, that movie was amazing. That movie was so well done. But
I just don't like it.
but this is where I'm also going with this is like you mentioned Man of Steel, and Man of Steel, I loved that movie too.
Yeah, it was
As a
great.
movie, that was a lot of fun. However, I also hate that movie for the way that they depicted Superman, because even though Superman again is not one of my favorite characters from the comics, he also was a very very specific character in every film and comic that he's ever been. He's always the Boy Scout, always the do-gooder, always the upbeat guy that foils against Batman, as like a foil against Batman. The
Yeah.
two of them
Hmm.
are like two sides of a coin.
Right.
And in Man of Steel, while super action packed and so fun to finally see a Superman like character smashing people through buildings and flying,
Yeah.
it
And it was
ruined some
gorgeous
of
too.
that.
Like
It
the
was
imagery
gorgeous.
was awesome.
But it ruined some of that character. It was about him being a brooding guy and not being upbeat and not being, I'm going to save everybody and we can do this together, America.
Yeah, and one of our friends pointed out, and it might have been you too as well, pointing out that like there isn't a separation of Clark Kent being the nerd and cautious and kind of quiet and collected to his alter ego, or not alter ego, but his super side, where he's Superman. He's this big buff, powerful, confident guy, and that movie definitely does not play. He doesn't play any difference. Like he's the same
No.
person essentially, just without glasses.
Right. And they don't do that at all. And that's such a missed opportunity because that was one of the greatest moments of Superman, both comics and movies, is when Christopher Reeve plays Superman. He depicts Clark Kent. He managed to, in his one performance, pull off and make the audience understand how it is that a man, by putting on glasses, can be seen as a different person completely from a guy flying around in tights. And even in the comics, they didn't do a great job of, because there was a suspension of disbelief. They didn't do a great job of separating that because they can't. It's a page. It's not moving. It's art. Whereas his performance, the way that he slumps over or shrugs his shoulders down, and like the way that he talks differently and like pushes up his glasses and seems to be like a cowardice type of character, like he played them so differently, and it's such a great performance that that's the true Superman. It's almost become like the quintessential Superman because of his one performance. And we did not get any of that in Man of Steel. Instead, we get this guy who smashes everybody and gets angry and is brooding. And, he's supposed to be the symbol of hope for everybody, not just humans, but everybody. And he doesn't come off that way. And I get that as a criticism of that film. Even though it's fun to watch, I totally get that as a criticism.
Yeah, I I don't
You
know.
sound convinced.
I guess this is where I'm not invested as much as you are, and so like I can't compare it to the comics, so I don't have that same drive or that same investment into, oh, I want this to be exactly like that. For me, that's books and people making movies out of books and always butcher my interpretation of the book, which happens with everything. But
Yeah, well, and that's a great kind of correlation because it's similar. And I think this is the question, like where does that line get drawn? Because there is previous material, and I'm not one usually to be like it has to be this one way. I love when they take characters and they do try new things with
yeah,
them. Like the new Batman in Justice League and Batman versus Superman.
yeah,
I liked that Batman. I
Yeah,
really
I was.
enjoyed that. Like, I thought Ben Affleck as Batman really worked well, and the way that they played it and had a suit. Like, I like new ideas. It's just that there is a source material, and I think that when you take it too far away from that, you lose something. You lose the character a little bit.
Yeah,
Whereas the Marvel universe, it's gone the opposite direction to an extreme, where we've taken characters that I gave didn't give a crap about way back and created these characters that I now love.
right.
But if I go back to the source material, I'm like, yeah, I don't see it. I'm not invested the same way. It's interesting.
Yeah, and for me, I get. I think it's me being just having or me having high expectations, and this is pulling from the side of a book becoming a movie. I always have high expectations that it will be the same and that they'll recreate the same images and scenes that I had in my head when I was reading, and I think that's why I get disappointed. And I'm sure that's why some people who might read the comics and then go to see some of these interpretations, in some cases several interpretations, basically Spider-Man, and get disappointed or like it even better, or hey, here's a new spin, like you, like there's a new spin to this, and I actually enjoy this. So you had just quickly just mentioned the new Batman movies, not standalones, but the Batman versus Superman, and then Justice League, which kind of the way they're doing it reminds me of how Captain America was kind of introduced into the Marvel movie universe.
Uh-huh.
But I was really impressed. I think a lot of people were not expecting him to be good, and we're still picturing him as Daredevil, which is another
Correct.
problem where we
Yeah.
have, it doesn't matter if it's DC or Marvel, there's a lot of bleeding of specific actors playing several several different superheroes, which bothers me.
Well, I disagree on one point there, and that is that you're bleeding from the Marvel side is taking characters, or I'm sorry, actors from the Marvel side into DC. There's been no bleeding from movie to movie inside of Marvel for actors.
Green Lantern.
Okay, yeah. But still, that's
Yeah. See, I was like, wait a second. I mean,
but still, that's the Fox Marvel movies versus
yeah, that's where
the
they get sketchy.
Marvel Studios stuff, and that's why that happens. So
And there's
yeah,
people who are
no,
like,
you're right. But still.
but people are like, what? A Green Lantern movie? You don't
Oh, but
watch
wait a
it.
minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Oh my gosh, Josh.
What?
It's oh my gosh, it's definitely too late at night. Green Lantern is a DC character, so my point still stands. Green Lantern is a DC character.
Why am I thinking? Oh my, yeah, he is.
And he played Deadpool, which is a Marvel character, so it
Right.
still stands. I mean, yeah, they're
Ryan
using the
Reynolds.
same actors, but for different groups, basically, DC versus Marvel. So
Yeah, that's also a thing that to me bothers me. Unfortunately, that is something that we can't control. And Ryan Reynolds did an amazing job and continues to kick butt with Deadpool.
oh my gosh, so good,
Um,
so good.
But where was I going with this? I wanted.
I think that Marvel has done a fantastic job, and this is where they should be applauded. They do end up getting big name actors,
Yeah.
but as like kind of like a background characters usually, or like side characters. Like the
Mhm.
main characters are usually all no names, or like have typically been people who get their start from these
Yeah,
movies
or
in a
they.
lot of ways. And you know, Robert Downey Jr. is obviously an exception,
Yeah.
but I mean, several of them, like the who's the guy who plays Captain America? Why can't I think of his name? Oh my gosh, Josh, come on.
Aaron would kill
Anyway,
me.
yeah, he's awesome. I'm a huge fan of him just because he played Captain America. He's so good.
I'm looking for you. Why can't I think of his name?
Oh my
People are
gosh.
gonna be angry at us. Chris
They already
Evans.
are. It's fine.
Jeez.
Yes, he's so good.
Yeah, he's good. But also, one of the sisters. Dang it. Olsen twins, but their older or younger sister. I don't remember if she's younger or older. She plays, what's her name in the Marvel Avengers, and she came in with Godzilla, but she was also got her like I think upbringing or star role in this, and she's a side character.
Oh yeah, she's Scarlet Witch.
Scarlet Witch, yeah. And I'm trying to think of who else, but the thing that you just mentioned about like the how Marvel has been bringing in these big names and putting them even in side characters, so and not just doing side characters and not doing some of the major parts or major leads. Uh, we're skipping around one character that I particularly enjoy, which I'm surprised we haven't talked about, but Doctor Strange, which kind of just came out of nowhere and they dropped it, and it was amazing. I didn't know I liked Doctor Strange. I never heard of him, and when I saw Cumberbatch, I said, "Oh, it's gonna be good." And he did a fantastic job being Doctor Strange. Only to find out that there was a 1970s Doctor Strange. Did you know that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's been a comic for a while too.
Oh, I know
Long
that,
time.
but I didn't realize. And there's like movies that I didn't know that came
I
out.
didn't know there was a movie from them. No, from
Yeah,
then. No.
yeah, 70s. But that's a fantastic movie. If we're bouncing around like crazy in this talk, I mean that.
Yeah, I mean that's a great example too of the same thing, and that is that I actively avoided Doctor Strange in the Marvel Universe comics because he's on paper not interesting at all to me.
Yeah,
Like, just really,
even
guys,
the
is
arts.
a wizard with like a cape?
y-
That's
That's original.
neat, I guess. Neat, I
Yeah,
guess. But then you have this movie, and Cumberbatch did an amazing job, and it
yeah,
was so fun to watch. And it's
he's
like,
good.
holy crap! It's not a Harry Potter movie, and we're watching wizards do cool stuff. This is great. So
Yeah, it was
I,
fantastic.
I don't know. Like, there's multiple problems, I guess I'll call them, or things to consider. And I hope that we don't lose the source material as they keep creating new movies. And
Yeah,
yet, I do like when they take risks and try new things, but for the right reasons, I guess
yeah.
is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about the future really quick? Because there are a few upcoming movies that are, and I'm totally skipping over like Black Panther that just came out, and the Infinity Wars, which was a huge deal. We have the part two of that coming out in the
Yeah, I'm
future,
excited about that.
which would I'm just excited just to see part two. I kind of anticipate. I felt like everybody should have anticipated the ending of part one, just based off of I think some of the trailers and the alluding to what could happen, what the whole purpose of that movie was. But I'm looking forward to actually something I think would be surprising, Captain Marvel, which I've never heard of, and is being played by a woman who I don't think has been in any sort of superhero movie to begin
No,
with.
she hasn't. Yeah, Captain Marvel has been a woman character forever. And again, one of those no name. Well, see, she was big in the Marvel universe, but I did not. I was like, no thanks. I'm good. I don't need another Superman type character. But I'm actually really excited about what they're going to do with this movie. So
Brie
that's
Larson.
exciting. And then you just mentioned the second part of the Infinity War saga thing, Mabob.
Mm-hmm.
I did not see the second part coming as I was watching the movie, and then I adore how they ended it in
Oh
the
yeah.
ending of that movie, and cannot wait for the second part. So that was a comic arc that I did not read, and I'm very glad in some ways that I didn't, because for me it didn't ruin. I don't know if I disagree with that kind of stuff ruining previous stories, but still it was a different take from what I understand. I don't quote me on this, but it was a different take from what the comics had, and for me it wasn't a big deal because I hadn't read any of the comics. So I loved that movie and loved how it ended.
Yeah, and I, I don't want to get attacked for saying I wasn't really impressed with that movie, just because it was predictable. But I was just happy to see another other bringing in Guardians of the Galaxy with Chris Pratt. I'm tired of seeing him.
Oh, he's awesome.
And having him brought in, and then or that them coming in, and merging like Thor, which is the best series ever in Marvel.
Oh, you're so wrong. There's so many things wrong with what you just said. So, wait a minute. So, you thought that Infinity War was predictable?
Yeah, it was super predictable.
How so?
Okay,
You
so
predicted the ending?
of course, well, I don't understand why people didn't see it. I mean, the whole purpose of the build up was you have this main character, or this main villain who's collecting the stones and
Okay,
putting.
wait. Hold on. Are you going to go into specifics? Because if you do, we have to say spoiler alert here.
Okay, spoiler alert.
Yeah,
Um,
so we're going to talk about the Infinity War movie, and if you haven't seen it already, turn the podcast off.
yes, or turn on the movie. And was it like two? How many hours is it? It's like 2.5 hours. It's a
Yeah.
really long movie. It's like Lord of the Rings all over again. But yeah, don't continue listening to this. But full disclosure, we're about to spoil it. But anyways, yeah. So the build up of this main villain getting all the stones that he needs, and he's succeeding in doing it, and constantly succeeding. And at the very end, you have this final battle, and everybody's together fighting, hooray! And uh, the guy has an extremely powerful tool, and all he has to do is uh, essentially steal the last stone. I mean, if he dies, he can essentially go back in time. Like he can do everything he needs to get this stone. It didn't make sense why he wouldn't get it. He was already beating, and he kept winning and winning and winning, and I just felt you can, in my opinion, I felt the movement of the movie was just clearly moving towards that he was going to be successful in having the stones, essentially taking out half of humanity, and sitting and watching the sunrise or whatever. Like the
No,
end.
see, I disagree. Like, you're right that it was moving in that direction, but every movie ever, especially superhero movies ever, and every superhero story and comic ever, has ever always rather pointed to that you always have this hopeless build up to this super powerful villain that is unstoppable, and then somehow the superheroes manage to find a way to topple the villain and stop it. And even though you want to build to this hopeless moment where he's got everything, he's collected everything, and then you're waiting for that moment to happen that happens in every single superhero movie, especially where they're like, we didn't think of this, let's try that. And then they try this super risky move, and maybe some of them die, but they end up winning. And that didn't happen. That was the best part. That was why it was so shocking and so good that that didn't happen. It wasn't cheapened. It was just 100% all in, and he just totally wins.
Yeah, but
So you saw that coming? That's what I don't understand. Like, every trope ever has always pointed to that not being the case. That it has always pointed to, yeah, he's getting everything. Yeah, he's winning. Yeah, he's beating everybody. And then you get to the end and they find somehow, either through massive sacrifice or irreparable choice, to find a way to either go back in time and take him out or whatever. And I imagine that's what's gonna be the next part of the story, because you had Doctor Strange, who went and found all 4 billion or 4 million different ways it could end, and chose the one where he saves everybody, which is
well,
going to be the eventuality of the next movie.
yeah,
So that's what was so great about that moment, why it was so shocking, and why people. It's not that they didn't see that he wasn't going to win coming. It's that they build up like that all the time. That's how you build those kinds of stories. And then somehow they find a way. And they didn't find a way. They just died.
yeah,
It was very Empire Strikes Back. That's
but
what I love about it. It
but
was like, here, you keep losing, and then you lose.
yeah, I guess I just didn't. And to me, it just like it was all pointing, and the signs were all pointing to that. It was bound to happen. I don't know. I had the same feeling with like Black Panther. It wasn't as exciting as I thought it was going to be. It was still good. I mean, these movies were all good. Just to be clear, I enjoyed going to the movies to see them, and I saw them all in the movies. but
See, like I'm with you on Black Panther. Like I enjoyed that movie, but I don't think it was the overhyped sensation that it was made out to be.
hmm
Um, I think it was a really great movie and one of the best put together Marvel movies ever. But that one was incredibly predictable and exactly the same story. You have this superhero, you can call him, I guess,
yeah.
who, like, against all odds, finally gets to the end and wins. And that's what every superhero story is, usually.
Well,
And
yeah.
that's what's so great about Infinity War.
Well, yeah, but again, it's like they're going to do part two. It's too big. There's too much happening, and there was already 2 hours in the movie, and there's no way that all the heroes are going to be successful in being able to stop him. He's like the momentum is moving too much. There's no way there's going to be a part two. That was clear.
See,
Maybe
that wasn't clear to me. To me, I got through that movie and I said, holy, holy cow. They just killed half of the Marvel universe.
yeah, and
Is
I
there
was
going to be a second one?
well, of course there would be. Why they would leave it? I
Well,
mean,
but that's what I didn't understand. And that's what I was like, oh my gosh, like there has to be. They have to be. There's no way they're not building towards that. They have to have a second one. But there was that moment where I was like, they lost. They totally lost.
yeah, my
And I almost like stood up in my seat and was like, this is awesome.
yeah, because you're like I wasn't anticipating it. That's how you felt.
Exactly.
And I mean, that's how I saw it with my wife, and she did the same thing. She was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that!" And everybody in the theaters, there was people bawling their eyes out.
See,
Like,
and I get that you may have seen it coming, but I don't. I take issue with the idea that you think that everybody should have seen that because I didn't. I didn't see that coming. I think that if you read the comics, maybe you saw it coming.
but I
Like,
didn't.
right, and I understand. But I mean, for the people who did, Adam, and I, I think that that it becomes more clear, but I didn't, and I knew nothing about it, and I almost feel better about that because it was more fun to like discover what happens. So that's where I take issues. Like I don't think that I think that it building towards this grand he wins usually is taken as like a building towards this final battle where they've managed to somehow pull it off. And it totally didn't do that, as we
Yeah,
just pointed out 5,000 times.
yeah, and this, I guess, maybe within the last couple of movies from Marvel and DC, I guess, too, if you want to include them. Like, I really haven't had a movie besides. I think the last time I was really pulled in was Doctor Strange, but the rest of them haven't been as exciting as they used to be. And I don't know if
Oh
that's
my
because I'm getting
gosh.
older or if it's because, but it's crazy because I enjoyed. Oh, I can't believe it. I lied. Thor Ragnarok and Doctor Strange were fantastic, but I don't know if it's because, like I said, my age. When I look back at the movies, Aaron and I are watching from chronological order, meaning from the actual timeline, not when the movies were released, and we're watching from start to finish with Marvel, and it's crazy to see the changes in obviously money that is being used for production,
Oh yeah.
but it's crazy to see the development from point A to point B right now. And I think it got to the point where how much better can you get besides technology and being able to have amazing CGI and cameos? Like I just got to the point where like I'm not impressed enough. I'll still see the movies. I'm hoping Infinity Wars 2 will be better because it'll be unpredictable for me. I'm hoping. I can't. I'm really hoping there's more Doctor Strange movies, but from the look of it, it's probably not happening anytime soon because they're probably just gonna do what they did with a few characters where they really just show in the Avengers. Like there isn't a standalone for the Scarlet Witch. There isn't a standalone for Hawkeye yet. Like there's nothing in there. But they're only in the Avenger movies. So I don't know. We'll see. I like kind of standoff characters, and I just don't see them doing anything more with Doctor Strange. So
We need to end, but I can't. I need to know more. Like I don't understand. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. Like are we watching the same movies?
yeah, we
Because
probably are.
there's been this massive progression, and I'm talking time released now, not chronological order, as you pointed
hmm
out.
Yeah.
where some of these movies don't even stand up anymore. You go back and watch them, and you're
Oh
like,
yeah,
"Whoa, okay,
Captain
that's
America, the first
why did
movie.
I think this was
Whole
amazing
yeah,
at the
Captain
time?"
America, the first movie is so bad.
It's like bland. I mean,
Yeah,
I love that movie, but it's bland in a lot of ways now compared to these huge budget movies like Infinity War where the CGI is flawless and
yeah.
they're having these massive like power level
Battles.
battles that are crazy. Like do you just go to these movies for seeing them smash each other through CGI buildings and like then you're not impressed? I don't understand. What's the problem?
I just go because they're the next in the series, and I eventually will watch them, so I might as well watch them in a movie theater where it's going to be a more enjoyable experience. And my wife loves Marvel Universe, so
But what is disappointing to them or about them to you?
I don't know. I just don't get as excited. Like I just don't. I'm not giddy about movie that I wasn't giddy about Infinity Wars. I wasn't just like, oh my god, I can't wait to see it. I wasn't like that for Black Panther. I wasn't like that for um, really like the DC when the Justice League came out after seeing Batman vs Superman. I had just gotten over the fact that Suicide Squad was absolutely terrible,
Oh God, that movie sucks so bad.
which should never be named because
Yep.
don't even spend the time to watch that movie.
Horrendous.
Yeah, that was the first time that I think I could have easily walked out of the movie theater and just said, "Take my money. I don't care. I can't sit here."
But
But
see, that's I feel justified because Suicide Squad, it went Suicide Squad, Batman vs Superman, and then Justice League, and all of them, like Superman versus or Batman vs Superman and Suicide Squad were horrendous. They were
yes,
terrible movies, and then Justice League was marginal. And I,
Wonder
I
Woman came
get it.
out and it was better. Blah blah blah.
Well, yeah, but like I get that those movies set this precedent for DC where it's like, come on, DC, get it together. Like you're
Yeah,
getting your butt handed to you by Marvel,
time and time and
but
time again.
Marvel every single time keeps delivering these movies that are over the top and beating out the last, which I understand maybe Black Panther you didn't think so as much. And I would put that too. I didn't find the character interesting as much as some of the other ones.
Right.
But Doctor Strange was great. And then you had what was after that? Let's see. I should bring up the list. You had Doctor Strange. Um, so you have Thor Ragnarok, which arguably we're not going to get into it here, was
No.
the only amazing Thor movie. And then you
Yes.
had Black Panther, which again I enjoyed a lot, but you did not, which is fine. And then Infinity War. Like I mean the lead up to and before Thor Ragnarok was Spider-Man Homecoming, which I haven't seen but people say is amazing.
Yeah, I haven't even finished it. And this is coming from someone who loves Spider-Man. I think I watched maybe 30 minutes and I stopped because I just couldn't get into it. I was like, I don't want to see this.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah. Ant-Man. I have no drive to see Ant-Man, nor do have any drive to see Ant-Man and the Wasp. I thought that character is stretching it. Like, why would you want to see? I'm not getting into this. I
Well, see, that's the comic book thing, though. That I mean, Ant-Man was a pretty popular comic book, and
what exciting? He could turn small. Whoa, cool.
he could turn giant and small, sir.
Yeah, wow.
Giant and small.
How
Um,
original.
and also, it's Paul Rudd, isn't it? Is the
Yeah.
actor?
Yes.
I love him. He's awesome and hilarious, and he plays Ant-Man just as he should, where it's like this funny guy doing this like I fell into it kind of thing, and it's more of a fun film. I haven't seen either Ant-Man myself because, I just haven't. But
Mm.
from what I understand, they're pretty good movies.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just trying to suss out. It sounds like it's more about what character is involved rather than or what character excites you because you're quoting the Thor movies incorrectly, I might add, but as the best, and you really like Thor, so that's probably why you like them as much as you do, right?
Yes.
Interesting. I don't know. I can't convince you, obviously, but I could just tell you you're wrong.
And that's fine. We can agree to disagree because no one. I don't think anyone's really going to be able to convince me. I'm too stubborn. So
All
let's
right,
try and wrap this bad boy up.
let's get to the rants.
So with the rant this week, which is kind of ironic in a sense. Uh, Something that I have a problem with, and that I know other people probably do as well, is why can't we just turn our brains off when we're trying to decompress? That can be when you're trying to sleep, when you're trying to not think about work, whatever it might be. My problem is that my brain is always trying to figure out something. It's always trying to analyze something. I'm always trying to figure out what's next, and it's really hard for me to turn off. So I just wish my brain I could just like flip a switch and I can go into this pleasant mode and just go to sleep, or not think about all the things that I have to do tomorrow, all the things that I need to do next week, or and vice versa. So for the love of God, please turn off every once in a while.
Well, this is why I play video games. It occupies my brain for
Yeah,
things like that.
and
Though I
reading
think you're
does that.
mentioning anxiety based on things that you have to do, and instead I just overanalyze stupid crap all the time. So that's I give my brain something to analyze, and then it's better. Not that I'm a doctor or know how to do any of this, so just consult your own doctor.
Don't use WebMD,
Yeah.
please.
For me, I'm going to very gingerly and carefully bring up a subject and try to make it about one thing so that the people who have their lives affected by it don't take it as another thing. I'm already doing a terrible job. But that is medication. And I am kind of sick of this country using medication as the only way to solve problems. There is dieting, there is changing your diet, there is trying different exercises, there is changing your lifestyle, making lifestyle changes, there is talking to a therapist about your problems rather than medicating your problems away. I think there's so many better ways, and I'm not talking about the people who actually need medication. Those people absolutely need it every day for heart conditions, for diabetes, for all kinds of chronological disorders.
Chronological disorders?
No, that's not the right way
That's
to say
not right.
that.
Like if
Chronic disorders.
you're having
Yeah.
disorders in order.
So for chronic disorders, oh my
That didn't make
gosh.
any sense.
Anyway, there are people who need medication, but the people who say, well, I don't feel great today, I'm going to take something, maybe rethink it. Maybe rethink what you're putting into your body because you don't really know. And maybe consider using your diet or changing your exercise schedule and trying something different. Try something different with your life before you just give up and start taking medication. I really think that we just over medicate so many people in this country. Anyway, I don't really know what I'm talking about, so end rant.
I to stay away from getting hate mail, I'm going to stay out of this conversation. I had someone talk to me about this earlier, and I think everybody should act in their own, or everyone is responsible for themselves. The way you go about treating something that might actually be happening or may not be happening, and you're letting your mind get to you, maybe it's not turning off.
See,
Um,
the difficult part is the mental issues. Mental issues are really difficult
yeah,
because you can't say to somebody, like, you're not having an actual problem.
yeah,
But
because you don't know
please
what you're
just
feeling.
go to the doctor and find out and talk with your doctor and stand up for yourself too with your doctor. Don't just say, okay, that sounds great, I'll take it.
Hmm.
And I feel like that too often happens. Yeah, the mental disorders and mental issues, that's dangerous because you don't really know
You don't
what
play with that. Don't play
you,
with that. Go
you
see
never
someone.
know. You never know what could be the problem. Is it a chemical imbalance? It might be, and then you need medication. But it's just be careful out there.
That was a really totally disturbing and not disturbing but depressing way to end this. But it's
uh,
okay.
okay, I'll tell you a joke. No.
No, please don't tell me a joke. No, I think the message should just be like take care of yourself. That's really what it should be. I mean, my wife worked in a mental hospital for I think 2 years, and just having her come home and she can't tell me anything that's happening, which I'm glad because you can just see it in her face that you're seeing people who have issues and are constantly going and seeing people to get help, and they're getting help, and they're whether or not they're doing it on their own accord or somebody else is forcing them to do it or whatever it might be. Like, don't let it happen, or just don't just push it aside, or don't fall victim to people telling you what you should do, which is ironic as we're telling you to go get it to get it figured out. But yeah, it's a slippery slope for sure. But
Sure, sure can be.
Well, let's go ahead and do the outro if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Cool. Thank you guys for listening to the 15th episode. You can follow the show on Twitter at Digital Divide PC, or send us feedback by sending an email to askdigitaldivide@gmail.com. You can get all this information if you go to our website, www.digitaldividepodcast.com. And if you want to follow our personal accounts, feel free to. I am at Twitter at JustinFry121. And Josh, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at JCharletto. That's my first initial last name, JCIARLETTO. Or you can email me at josh@charletto.com.
If you like this episode or any of our other episodes, give us a review on iTunes and anywhere you're listening to your podcasts. It really helps us out. And until next time, take care.
Bye.